Hello friends! Welcome to our channel. Today's story is called Between Loyalty and Desire. A love tested and silent. The party had ended an hour ago. Mark was going upstairs to bed, but not before giving his wife one last glance. She was still laughing at some joke that Daniel said, and Mark couldn't help but smile back. His best friend had a way of lightening up the mood with his goofy sense of humor, and everyone had fallen on him like a pack of wolves, including him. She had spent most of the night talking to Daniel, and Mark had found himself ignored. Put in uncomfortable situations where he was expected to play the role of the supportive husband, he decided not to make an issue out of it. It was just one of those nights. He went to bed, but downstairs, his wife was still talking. As he lay there, listening to her laugh, he realized that lately, these nights had become a pattern. The parties were always lively when Daniel came over. His energy was contagious, and his presence brought people closer together. But Mark couldn't shake off this feeling of being left. It was like a wedge had been driven between him and his wife, and he wasn't sure how to fix it. Daniel stayed behind after the party, claiming he needed to help clean up. Mark watched from the top of the stairs as his wife poured 2 glasses of wine. "I don't," she said, smiling. "You should leave, too. It's getting late." But Daniel didn't move. Instead, he got closer, and Mark saw a change in his best friend's demeanor. The playful grin was gone, replaced by something serious. "Look," Daniel began, his voice low. "We need to talk." She took a sip of her wine, her eyes fixed on the swirling liquid. "What do you want to talk about?" she asked, without turning to face him. Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Why are you doing it?" he asked softly. "What are you trying to hide?" She turned to him, her eyes wide with surprise. "I'm not hiding anything," she said. Daniel shook his head, his gaze intense. "Don't lie to me," he said, taking a step closer. "I know you haven't been honest with me. I know there's something going on between you and Mark." She took another sip of wine, her hands shaking slightly. "That's not true," she whispered. Daniel reached out and cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs stroking her cheeks. "Don't lie to me!" he repeated, his voice filled with emotion. "I can feel it in my gut. There's something between you two. And if you're not going to be honest with me, then at least tell me what Mark means to you." She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. For a moment, she felt a surge of emotion, a desire to confess everything, to pour out the secrets that had been eating away at her soul. But she couldn't bring herself to do it. Not yet. Instead, she pulled away from him, her eyes glistening with tears. "I can't talk about this," she whispered, turning away to hide her face. "It's too painful." Daniel's heart clenched at the sight of her pain. He knew he had pushed her too far, but he couldn't bear the thought of her lying to him anymore. He wanted to know the truth, even if it shattered him. "Please," he pleaded, reaching out to touch her again. "Tell me what's going on. Tell me how you really feel." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I can't!" She ran out of the room, leaving Daniel standing there alone with his unanswered questions and his growing suspicion that there was more to her behavior than she was letting on. She locked herself in the bedroom, trying to regain her composure. She knew she couldn't keep up the charade forever. But the thought of confessing her true feelings to Daniel terrified her. What if he rejected her? What if he didn't believe her? The uncertainty gnawed at her, making her feel trapped and suffocated. The next morning, she woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside. She got out and went to the window. She could see Daniel's car parked in the driveway, but he wasn't there. He had left early that morning. She knew he would come back later, though, and then she would have to face him again. As the day wore on, she couldn't focus on anything. She kept replaying her conversation with Daniel in her head. She knew she couldn't keep lying to him forever, so she decided to send him a message explaining that she needed more time. But as she typed out the message, she hesitated. What if he pressed her for answers? What if he confronted her? As if sensing her thoughts, her phone vibrated. She looked at the screen and saw a new message. It simply said, "When will I see you again?" She paused, surprised by his straightforwardness. She knew she couldn't keep evading him, so she replied, "Tonight," she hoped that would be enough. That evening, Daniel arrived early. He knocked on the door. She opened. He stepped inside, and they stood there awkwardly for a moment. "I'm glad you came," she said finally. "There's something I need to tell you." He nodded, his eyes searching hers. "I know," he said softly, and I'm here to listen. She led him into the living room and sat down. I've been seeing Mark, she began, her voice trembling. I'm sorry. I never to hurt you. Daniel remained silent, his expression unreadable. She continued. I know I haven't been honest with you. Sorry. But I was afraid you wouldn't understand. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. So you thought I wouldn't care about you? He said quietly. I thought I didn't matter. She stood up, her eyes pleased. Daniel. That's not true, she whispered. I'm so sorry. She reached out to touch him, but he stepped away. Don't touch me, he said, his voice cracking. Don't lie to me again. He stormed out of the house, leaving her standing there in the silence, feeling the weight of her betrayal crushing. Over the next few weeks, she and Daniel continued to see each other in secret, meeting in the house while Mark was away. They talked for hours, sharing their deeper feelings with each other. Daniel told her about his dreams and aspirations, and she listened intently, feeling a sense of connection with him that she had never experienced before. Everything to her, and she loved him with all her heart. One day, he finally confessed. I'm in love with you, he said, his voice shaking. I have been for years. She looked at him, her eyes filled with emotion. She whispered, reaching out to touch him. I love you too. And in that moment, she felt complete. Her happiness was short-lived. He soon became restless. He couldn't bear the thought of being apart from her any longer. He wanted openly, not in secret. He started demanding that she'll leave Mark and come with him. She struggled with the decision. She loved Daniel, but she also had a deep sense of loyalty. She had been with Mark for years, and even though their relationship had its ups and downs, she couldn't bring herself to leave him. He sensed her hesitation and became impatient. He confronted her, his voice filled with anger. Why won't you leave with me? He demanded. I love you. Don't you love me? She looked at him, streaming down her face. I'm sorry, she whispered. I can't leave Mark. Daniel shook his head, his eyes blazing with anger. Can't do this to me, he said, his voice breaking. Don't make me beg on my knees for you. She stared at him, stunned by his outburst. She had never seen him so angry, so desperate. She reached out, but he slapped her hand away. Don't ever touch me again, he hissed. If you're not going to come with me, then get out of my life. He stormed, leaving her standing there in the darkness, feeling the full weight of her choices crashing down on her. Mark began to notice the distance between them. He had been feeling it for weeks, seeing it. The way she looked at Daniel, the way they interacted. He had confronted her about it, his voice tight with suppressed anger. What's going on between Daniel? He had asked. She had denied anything, but Mark wasn't convinced. One day, he found a lipstick stain on Daniel's collar. He had confronted Daniel, his fists clenched, ready to fight. But Daniel had a cold, hard sound that made Mark's blood boil. Do you think she's worth fighting for? Daniel had asked, his eyes gleaming with challenge. Don't you think she's worth risking it all for? Mark had stormed out, feeling defeated. He knew his wife was seeing Daniel in secret, but he couldn't prove it. He had tried to talk to her, but she had only brushed off his concerns. He finally confronted her one night when they were alone in bed. Are you in love with Daniel? He asked quietly. She silently, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. I'm sorry, she whispered finally. I'm so sorry. She turned to face him, her eyes glistening with tears. I love you, Mark, she said, her voice. I'm sorry I haven't been honest with you. I'm sorry I've hurt you. She reached out to touch him, but he pulled away. Don't touch me, he said, his voice shaking. How could you do this to me? How could you betray me like this? She shook her head, tears streaming down. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I don't know what to say. I don't know what happened. I'm so sorry. She reached out to him again, slapped him. Get away from me, he said, his voice filled with pain. I don't want to hear it. I don't want your excuses. I just want the truth. She closed her eyes, tears soaking her pillow. I love you, Mark, she whispered. I'm so sorry. He got up and walked away, leaving her there in the darkness, by her guilt and despair. The next morning, Mark was gone. She found a note on the kitchen table saying that he had left and needed space. She knew he wasn't coming. She had broken his trust, and there was no excuse for it. She had been selfish and careless, and now she had lost a person who truly loved her. In the end, she chose to stay in the house, hoping that one day Mark would come back and forgive her. But that never came. She was left alone in the silence of the empty house, surrounded by the ghosts of her past and the shadows of her regrets.